Zella, a Naxian maid, worked on a massive space station where different alien and human species coexisted. The station was a marvel of advanced technology, with shimmering lights and automated systems humming in the background. Zella was responsible for cleaning the quarters of Jake Thornton, a human diplomat. Like many of her kind, she believed humans were primitive compared to the more evolved alien species. Humans used outdated methods for everything, and to her, their way of life seemed inefficient. One day, while Zella was quietly going about her routine, she noticed something strange. Jake was inside his bathroom, using water. Yes, actual water, to bathe. For Naxians, this was shocking. They used spores that absorbed into their skin to keep clean. The idea of drenching oneself with water seemed absurd and wasteful to Zella. Curiosity and surprise crept into her as she peeked inside, watching the water cascade over Jake. She had never seen anything like it before. Her heart raced with confusion and disbelief. How could a species so advanced in some ways rely on such a primitive method of hygiene? As Jake continued his shower, completely unaware of Zella's gaze, she felt a mixture of curiosity and discomfort. Just then, Jake turned slightly, and their eyes met for a brief moment. Zella froze, unsure of how he would react to her spying. Zella hurried out of Jake's quarters, her mind racing. She had never seen something like that before. Water falling from a nozzle, a human standing under it, and scrubbing himself with some sort of foam. It was baffling to her. The Naxians had long evolved past such primitive methods. They believed their spores were a more efficient, advanced way to stay clean. For Zella, the human way was outdated, inefficient, and simply unnecessary. Yet she couldn't shake off what she had seen. As she moved through the bustling corridors of the space station, her thoughts kept drifting back to that moment. Zella had heard stories of humans being different, but nothing like this. Despite her initial discomfort, a deep curiosity began to settle within her. What if humans were not as primitive as she believed? What if they had their own unique way of doing things, methods that might seem strange but were effective in their own right? Zella was determined to learn more. She had always been a curious Naxian, known for asking questions that no one else dared to. Some of her fellow workers dismissed her curiosity as a weakness, something that distracted her from her duties. But Zella saw it as her strength. Understanding different species, even primitive ones like humans, would make her better at her job and give her insight into the many cultures aboard the station. The next day, Zella was back at Jake's quarters, cleaning silently as usual. But this time, she had a plan. She waited for Jake to leave before entering the bathroom, where she had witnessed the strange shower. Everything seemed as normal as before, but she moved closer to examine the setup. The faucet, the soap, the steam, they were all alien to her. Zella hesitated, then reached out and touched the soap bar, feeling its texture. The foam was light and smooth between her fingers. Her eyes scanned the bathroom, and she saw a small panel on the wall. She assumed it controlled the water flow. Without thinking twice, she tapped it. Immediately, water began pouring from the showerhead above her. She jumped back in shock, the cool liquid startling her. Zella looked around to ensure no one was watching and slowly extended her hand under the stream. The water ran through her fingers, and for the first time, she realized that it wasn't just primitive. It was refreshing. What started as curiosity now became something more. There was a comfort to the sensation of water flowing over her skin that her Naxian spores had never provided. She let the water run for a few more seconds, completely fascinated by the human way of bathing. The more she learned, the less she felt like she understood humans. Perhaps they weren't as backward as she once thought. Suddenly, the door hissed open, and Zella's heart nearly stopped. Jake had returned early. She quickly shut off the water and scrambled to look busy, wiping surfaces frantically. Jake walked in, a confused look on his face. His sharp human eyes darted around the room, noticing the slight dampness on the floor. "Was the shower running?" he asked, raising an eyebrow. Zella's mind raced. How could she explain this? How could she admit that she had been so curious about human hygiene that she experimented with the water? There was a leak, Zella stammered, her cheeks flushing a pale shade of blue, a Naxian trait when they were flustered. Jake studied her for a moment, his gaze lingering. There was something odd about her behavior, but he decided not to push it. "All right, I'll call maintenance to fix it," Jake said, though his tone suggested he wasn't entirely convinced. As Jake left the room again, Zella breathed a sigh of relief. She had narrowly avoided being caught, but the incident only deepened her curiosity about humans. Their ways were strange, but there was something undeniably fascinating about them. She had to know more. Zella was now determined to understand humans better. She wanted to learn their ways, their habits, and maybe, just maybe, see the world through their eyes. Little did she know, this was just the beginning of a journey that would challenge her beliefs and transform her view of humans forever. The more she explored, the more she would discover that humans weren't just resilient. They were extraordinary in ways she had never imagined. The next few days passed with Zella's mind still occupied by thoughts of the human and his strange showering habits. She carried out her duties in Jake's quarters as usual, but now she paid more attention to the details of human life. Every time Jake left for meetings or duties, she would look around his living space, trying to piece together more clues about human culture. Everything was so different: their food, their technology, and most of all, their sense of cleanliness. Zella wasn't the only one noticing the oddities of humans. Among the workers and students at the space station, there was always talk of how different humans were. Many thought of them as outdated or primitive, but Zella wasn't so sure anymore. The more she observed, the more she realized there was a certain logic to their ways, even if they didn't seem as efficient as Naxian methods. One day, Zella got her chance to ask Jake directly. He had just finished a long meeting with the station's officials and looked tired as he returned to his quarters. As usual, Zella was there, cleaning up after him. She watched him settle into his chair, looking weary from the day's work. Summoning her courage, Zella decided to break the silence. "Jake, may I ask you something?" She ventured cautiously, her hands busy straightening a nearby table. Jake looked up, surprised. "Of course, Zella. What's on your mind?" Zella hesitated for a moment. "I saw you in the shower the other day. I wasn't spying, I swear, but I couldn't help but notice how different it is from how we Naxians clean ourselves. We use spores, and you use water. Why?" Jake chuckled softly, though not in a condescending way. He leaned back in his chair, clearly interested in the conversation. "I've heard about Naxian spores. Sounds efficient, but I guess it's all about what you're used to, isn't it?" He paused, thinking about how to explain. "Humans have always used water. It's just part of our biology and culture. Water is life for us. It cleans, refreshes, and even relaxes us. It's more than just hygiene. It's almost ritualistic." Zella tilted her head, intrigued. "Ritualistic? You mean there's more to it than just getting clean?" Jake nodded. "For many humans, yes. Taking a shower or a bath is more than washing off dirt. It's a way to unwind, to feel at peace. It's something personal. Some even say it helps clear their minds. We might not have spores that clean us instantly, but there's something satisfying about the process." Zella pondered his words, her curiosity deepening. "But isn't it wasteful, using so much water just to clean yourself?" Jake smiled at her thoughtful question. "Maybe it seems that way, but for us, it's worth it. It's about feeling human, connected to the world around us. Water is essential to our survival, not just for cleaning, but for life in general. It's a part of who we are." Zella was silent for a moment, absorbing what Jake had said. It was strange, but in some way, she could understand it. For Naxians, spores were efficient and functional, but they lacked the emotional connection that Jake described. Could it be that humans found meaning in these everyday tasks? Jake stood up, stretching his tired limbs. I've noticed you've been curious about humans lately. You're not the first to find our ways odd. But that's okay. We're all a bit different here on this station. Zella smiled shyly. I suppose we are. I never thought I'd find myself so interested in human culture. Jake gave her a friendly nod. Curiosity is good. It's what keeps us learning. If you ever have more questions, feel free to ask. We're all here to understand each other better, aren't we? As Jake left the room, Zella couldn't help but feel a new sense of respect for humans. They were more than just strange, primitive beings. There was depth to their ways, a reason behind their seemingly outdated methods. And as she continued her work, Zella realized that maybe, just maybe, humans weren't as different from Naxians as she had once thought. But she still had so much to learn, and with each passing day, her curiosity about humans and Jake grew stronger. She could sense that this was only the beginning of her journey of understanding. Days turned into weeks, and Zella's understanding of human behavior continued to evolve. The space station, a hub of interspecies cooperation, was a perfect place for different cultures to mix, but Zella found herself paying particular attention to humans. Jake, the human diplomat, had become a point of fascination for her. Every day, he demonstrated traits she had never expected from his species: kindness, resilience, and a strange sense of connection to the world around him. One afternoon, while cleaning Jake's quarters, Zella saw him organizing his medical supplies. His futuristic first aid kit, full of devices that could heal injuries instantly, always caught her attention. She knew these tools were crucial in the dangerous environments humans often faced. However, something else drew her in today: a small, worn-out object resting on the table next to his kit. It wasn't one of the advanced tools she expected. It was a simple bandage, old-fashioned by any species standards. Zella couldn't hold back her curiosity. "Jake," she asked, "why do you keep this? Your medical kit can heal any wound, right? Why would you need something so basic?" Jake looked up, smiling at the question. "You're right. Our technology has come a long way. But sometimes it's not just about the tools. This bandage reminds me of home." He held it up, his voice softening. "I grew up in a small town on Earth. My mother was a nurse, and she always told me that while technology helps, it's the personal touch that heals the heart. A simple bandage, applied with care, can sometimes do more than any advanced machine." Zella furrowed her brow. "But how? Isn't the purpose to heal as quickly as possible?" Jake shook his head, his expression thoughtful. "Healing isn't just about closing a wound. It's about comfort, trust, and care. When you're in pain, having someone there to help, to make you feel safe, that's just as important as the medicine. This bandage reminds me of that." Zella had never thought about healing in such an emotional way. Naxians were highly advanced when it came to medicine. They used spores and automated machines that worked without the need for a healer's presence. It was efficient, but cold. There was no emotional connection, no personal touch. "I don't understand," Zella admitted, feeling a little embarrassed. "In my culture, we rely on technology alone. We don't comfort each other like that." Jake smiled kindly. "That's okay. Every species has its way of doing things, but for humans, caring for each other goes beyond just fixing the problem. It's about being there for someone, making them feel like they're not alone." Zella thought about this for a moment. "It seems inefficient," she said, though her voice lacked conviction. Deep down, she was starting to see the beauty in what Jake described, even if it was unfamiliar to her. Jake laughed softly. "Maybe it is, but it's who we are. We're not the strongest or the fastest species, and we definitely don't have the most advanced technology. But we've survived through something else: our ability to connect with each other, to care. That's what makes us human." Zella felt a warmth she hadn't expected. She had spent so much time observing Jake, thinking humans were strange, almost primitive in their ways. But now she realized there was something deeper, something valuable in the human approach to life. They found strength in their connections, in the small personal moments that other species might overlook. As Zella cleaned around Jake's quarters, her mind wandered back to the day she saw him in the shower. At first, she thought his methods were bizarre, outdated. But now, she wondered if there was more to it, just like with the bandage. Humans seemed to find meaning in things that were simple, things that were personal. Maybe humans aren't so strange after all, she muttered to herself with a smile. Jake caught her words and grinned. We might be strange, Zella, but we're proud of it. Zella chuckled softly. There was still so much she didn't understand. But one thing was clear. She was beginning to see humans in a new light. There was a bond forming between her and Jake, one that transcended species and technology. It was a bond built on understanding, curiosity, and a growing respect for the human way of life. And deep down, Zella knew this was only the beginning of her journey with the humans. As the days passed, Zella found herself growing more comfortable in Jake's presence. The lessons she had learned about human ways, especially the importance of emotional connection, had started to change her perspective. She no longer saw humans as primitive or odd. Instead, she began to admire their resilience, their ability to care for one another in ways that were more than just about survival. But she was about to face a situation that would test everything she had come to understand about humans and herself. One morning, as Zella made her way to Jake's quarters for her usual cleaning duties, an alarm blared through the space station. The red lights flashed, and a robotic voice echoed through the halls. Warning: medical emergency in Sector 9. All personnel, prepare for evacuation. Zella's heart raced. She quickly turned to see Jake sprinting toward her, his usual calm demeanor replaced with urgency. Zella, I need you to help me, he called, motioning for her to follow. What's happening? Zella asked, her voice trembling. An accident in one of the research labs, Jake explained. A containment breach. Toxic fumes are spreading, and people are injured. We need to get to them before it's too late. Zella hesitated. But I'm not trained for this. I'm just a maid. Jake stopped and turned to face her. His eyes were intense, but filled with trust. Zella, you've seen enough to know that this isn't about training. It's about doing what we can, with what we have. I need your help. You're smart, capable, and quick on your feet. We can save them, but I can't do it alone. Zella swallowed hard. This was her chance to prove that she had learned something from the humans, something beyond their methods. She nodded, determination filling her chest. Okay, what do we do? Jake led Zella to the emergency area, where injured researchers and scientists were scattered around the floor, coughing and gasping for air. The room was filled with a thick, greenish fog that made it hard to breathe, even with the protective masks Jake handed her. Stay close to me, Jake instructed. We'll work together. They quickly moved to the first group of injured people. Zella watched as Jake used his advanced medical tools with precision and care, just as she had seen him do before. But this time, it wasn't in a controlled environment. This was real, and lives were on the line. Hold this, Jake said, handing Zella a small device that emitted a soft glow. This will neutralize the toxins around us for a few minutes, but we need to work fast. Zella, though nervous, followed Jake's lead. Together, they began treating the injured, applying emergency first aid, and moving people to a safer part of the station. As they worked, Zella noticed something remarkable: Jake's calmness in the face of chaos. Despite the danger, he never lost his focus, and his care for the injured was as personal and thoughtful as ever. At one point, Zella found herself kneeling next to a badly injured alien scientist. His skin had turned a sickly shade of gray, and he was struggling to breathe. Zella froze, unsure of what to do. Zella, Jake called out. You can do this. Remember what I taught you. You don't need the best tools, just the will to help. Taking a deep breath, Zella followed Jake's earlier instructions. She applied a small patch to the scientist's chest, releasing a healing serum. Then, she gently placed her hand on his shoulder, something she had seen Jake do countless times. "Stay with me," Zella whispered, her voice soft but firm. "You're going to be okay." To her surprise, the scientist's breathing steadied, and his skin began to regain its natural color. Zella let out a sigh of relief, but more than that, she felt a strange sense of pride. For the first time, she had helped someone in a way she had never imagined possible. As the crisis subsided and the injured were taken to safety, Zella and Jake stood in the aftermath, exhausted but victorious. Zella's hands were shaking, but inside, she felt a newfound strength. Jake smiled at her, his eyes filled with gratitude. "You did great, Zella. I couldn't have done this without you." Zella returned the smile, feeling a warmth spread through her. "Maybe humans aren't the only ones who care," she said, her voice soft but full of meaning. Jake laughed. "You're right. Maybe we got more in common than we thought." In that moment, Zella realized that she had crossed a bridge, one that connected not just two species but two ways of understanding the world. She had learned from Jake, but she had also discovered something powerful within herself: the courage to care, the strength to act, and the ability to make a difference, no matter the odds. As Zella and Jake caught their breath after the emergency, an unsettling feeling crept into Zella's mind. The containment breach seemed too coincidental, too perfect in its timing. She couldn't shake the feeling that something more sinister was going on behind the scenes. Jake, always perceptive, noticed her troubled expression. "You're thinking the same thing I am, aren't you?" Jake asked, his voice low but steady. Zella nodded. "That breach wasn't an accident, was it?" Jake frowned, his gaze darkening. "I don't think so. There's been too much tension around here lately. Strange orders, unexplained incidents. Someone is pulling the strings, and I intend to find out who." Zella's stomach twisted with unease. Her instincts as a Naxian maid had always told her to stay out of the affairs of the powerful, but this was different. She had seen too much, and now she was part of something bigger than she had ever imagined. For the first time, she felt a responsibility to get to the bottom of whatever was happening on the space station. "Where do we start?" Zella asked, her voice barely above a whisper. Jake looked around cautiously before leaning in closer. "The station's security logs. If there's been any suspicious activity, it'll be recorded there." They made their way to the lower levels of the space station, where the security hub was located. As they moved through the dimly lit corridors, Zella couldn't help but notice the strange looks they received from the guards stationed along the way. It was as if they knew something, but weren't allowed to say. The air felt heavy with secrecy. When they reached the security hub, Jake used his credentials to gain access. The room was cold and sterile, filled with rows of monitors displaying various parts of the station. Zella shivered as she stepped inside, feeling as though they were walking into a trap. "Keep an eye out," Jake instructed as he approached the main console. "This won't take long." Zella stood by the door, her heart pounding. She had never been this close to something so dangerous before, but she trusted Jake. If anyone could uncover the truth, it was him. As he worked through the security system, Zella's mind raced with possibilities. Who could be behind the breach? And why? Suddenly, the door slid open, and two guards entered the room, their faces stern. Zella froze, her hand instinctively reaching for the small device Jake had given her earlier, a cloaking tool that could temporarily hide them from view. "Can we help you?" one of the guards asked, his tone cold. Jake glanced up from the console, his expression calm but alert. "Just checking the logs after the breach. We need to make sure everything's secure." The guards exchanged a glance, their eyes narrowing. "That's our job. You should leave this to the professionals, human." Zella's heart skipped a beat. Something was definitely wrong. These guards weren't just here to check on them. They were here to stop them. Jake stood up slowly, his hand subtly reaching toward his pocket, where Zella knew he kept a small stun device. "I'm just following protocol. You can never be too careful, right?" The tension in the room was thick, and Zella could feel her pulse quickening. She had to act fast. Without thinking, she activated the cloaking device, wrapping both her and Jake in an invisible shield. The guards looked around in confusion, their hands reaching for their weapons. "Where did they go?" one of the guards muttered. "They couldn't have gotten far," the other replied, moving toward the door. Zella pulled Jake toward the exit, their steps silent under the cloak of invisibility. They slipped past the guards and into the hallway, their hearts racing. Once they were far enough from the security hub, Zella deactivated the device, and they both let out a sigh of relief. "That was close," Jake said, his voice barely above a whisper. Zella nodded, still shaken from the encounter. "What did you find?" Jake's expression grew grim. "The logs have been tampered with. Someone's been erasing evidence of key events, including the breach. This goes deeper than I thought." Zella's mind reeled. Whoever was behind this had powerful connections, and they wouldn't stop until they got what they wanted. But now, Zella and Jake were one step closer to uncovering the truth. They had seen the cracks in the station's facade, and there was no turning back. "We need to find out who's responsible," Zella said, her voice filled with determination. Jake nodded. "And we will. But we'll have to be careful. Whoever's behind, this won't let us expose them easily." As they walked away from the security hub, Zella felt a surge of resolve. This was no longer just about survival or proving herself. It was about doing what was right, no matter the cost. And for the first time, she felt ready to face whatever dangers lay ahead. With the revelation of the tampered security logs weighing heavily on their minds, Zella and Jake set out to gather more evidence. They had uncovered a conspiracy that threatened not just their lives, but the safety of everyone on the space station. Determined to expose the truth, they knew they needed allies. Zella suggested they seek out her friend, Leora, who was a skilled hacker and had access to valuable information. "She works in the data analysis department," Zella explained as they navigated the bustling hallways, filled with various alien species. "If anyone can help us, it's her." As they approached Leora's office, Zella felt a mix of excitement and anxiety. She knocked softly on the door, and it swung open to reveal Leora, a slender alien with vibrant blue skin and bright yellow eyes. "Zella, what's going on? You look worried," she said, her tone shifting to concern. "Can we come in?" "It's urgent," Zella replied, glancing over her shoulder to ensure they weren't being followed. Once inside, they quickly explained the situation: the security breach, the tampered logs, and their suspicion of a hidden agenda. Lyra listened intently, her eyes widening in shock. "You're saying someone inside the station is sabotaging operations? That's serious." Jake interjected, "We need your help to dig deeper. If we can access the central network, we might find the information we need to confront whoever is behind this." Leora hesitated for a moment. "It's risky. The security systems are tight, and if they catch me. But if what you're saying is true, then we have to do something. I'm in." Together, the trio moved swiftly through the station, avoiding the watchful eyes of guards. Lyra led them to a hidden terminal located in a maintenance room, far from the public eye. She quickly connected to the system, her fingers flying across the console as she worked. "Let's see what we can find," Leora muttered, her brow furrowed in concentration. The room was filled with the soft hum of machinery, and Zella felt a mix of hope and fear. Would they find the evidence they needed? Minutes felt like hours as Leora sifted through layers of data, her expression shifting from focused to puzzled. "This doesn't make sense. There's a lot of encrypted files here, way more than usual. It's like someone is trying to hide something big." Just then, alarms blared throughout the station, drowning the room in red light. "What's happening?" Zella exclaimed, panic rising in her chest. Lyra's eyes widened. "I think I triggered a security alert. We need to move. Now." Jake quickly grabbed Zella's hand, and they all dashed out of the maintenance room, hearts racing. The station was now on high alert, and they could hear footsteps echoing behind them. "This way," Jake shouted, leading them through a series of back corridors. As they turned a corner, they found themselves face to face with a group of armed guards. "Stop right there," one of them yelled, raising his weapon. Thinking quickly, Zella activated the cloaking device she had used before. The three of them became invisible, allowing them to slip past the guards unnoticed. They hurried to the nearest transport bay, where small ships docked for departures. Once inside the bay, Zella took a moment to catch her breath. "We can't keep running. We need to find the main control room. That's where we can access the central network and expose whoever is behind this." Leora nodded, her face set in determination. "I can get us in, but we need to be quick. If they figure out what we're doing, they'll stop us for sure." With newfound resolve, they made their way to the control room, using the chaos outside to their advantage. They navigated through the tight corridors, avoiding guards as they went. Finally, they reached the control room door, and Leora set to work on the locking mechanism. Just as the door slid open, a voice boomed from behind them. "Stop right there." It was the station commander, a stern alien figure with an aura of authority. "You're in way over your heads," he warned, his eyes narrowing. Jake stepped forward, ready to confront him. "We know what you're doing. You can't hide it any longer." The commander sneered. "You think you can expose me? You're just a human and a couple of alien misfits." But Zella felt a surge of courage. "You underestimate us. We won't back down. You may be powerful, but we will fight for what's right." In that moment, Zella activated the cloaking device once more, and they slipped past the commander as he fumbled for his weapon. Inside the control room, Leora worked feverishly to access the central network. "Almost there," she shouted, her voice filled with urgency. Just as they heard footsteps approaching, the screen lit up, displaying evidence of the commander's illegal activities and plans. Zella felt a rush of triumph. "Now," Jake yelled, and they transmitted the information to all communication channels within the station. "Let everyone know the truth." As the alarms rang out and the commander's face turned pale, Zella and Jake exchanged determined glances. They had fought against the odds, and now they were ready to face whatever came next together. They had each other, and they had the truth on their side. With their resolve stronger than ever, they braced themselves for the battle ahead, knowing they would stand united against any threat that dared to challenge them.